Welcome to the Chronicles of a Cheating Wife channel. A new story every day. Don't forget to subscribe. My primary concern throughout my life has been my physical appearance. I don't fit the typical image of a knight in shining armor that many women dream of. Standing at an average height, I'm a simple guy with minimal body fat. My features, like my broad nose and deep-set, squinty eyes, don't exactly add to my charm. Though I'm fortunate to have all my teeth and hair, it doesn't elevate my overall appeal. Working as a heavy equipment operator, I keep my sandy hair trimmed short for practicality. It's easier to maintain and keeps out of my face. Despite my perceived shortcomings, I consider myself lucky to have found a woman to share my life with. Grace, while not conventionally stunning, was perfectly beautiful to me. Standing at 5'2", she was petite compared to me. She embraced my quirks and teased me affectionately, creating an atmosphere of comfort and acceptance in our relationship. We tied the knot early in life and were blessed with 2 children, 16-year-old Dave and his younger sister Monica. Thankfully, they inherited more of their mother's looks than mine. Both kids were bright and well-behaved, filling me with pride as a father and adding to the contentment of our family life. I was employed by my Uncle Henry, working as a heavy equipment operator in what amounted to a family-run enterprise. While Uncle Henry was the one overseeing operations, the rest of us received salaries and put in as many hours as possible. At the end of each year, any profits not earmarked for new equipment were divvied up among the family members, a setup that suited us well. Meanwhile, Grace found employment at a small company specializing in property appraisals for banks and investment firms. Although she wasn't directly involved in the appraisal process, she handled various clerical tasks such as typing, filing, and data entry. Life was comfortable, and I should have been content with that. However, it was a seemingly insignificant incident that sparked a chain of unsettling thoughts. I happened to notice what looked like a hickey on my wife's neck. Normally, I would have playfully teased her about it, but this time, for some inexplicable reason, I held back. I knew I hadn't caused it, and it could have been a bug bite or an ingrown hair, but her efforts to conceal it with makeup at home only fueled my unease. While I could understand her desire to cover it up when going out, I couldn't shake the question of why she felt the need to do so at home. If Grace was seeing someone else, it would have to be during the day. She never ventured out alone at night, and I was always by her side when she did. I was certain she wasn't meeting anyone at our house. The thought gnawed at me for an entire week, even after the love bite had faded, leaving only the lingering memory. Our intimate life remained intact. While perhaps I wasn't as romantic as I could have been, I made efforts, buying her flowers unexpectedly, never forgetting her birthday or our anniversary. We dined out regularly, caught shows or movies when time allowed, and annually embarked on family vacations to special destinations. I valued her deeply as both a wife and a companion. Yet here I was driving myself mad over a trivial red mark on her neck. With work slowing down, Uncle Henry had no qualms about granting me a few days off. Unsure of what I was seeking or what I would do, I resolved to shadow Grace and see if anything transpired. Borrowing a car from a colleague, I armed myself with a crossword puzzle book and began my surveillance. For 2 days, nothing of note occurred. I trailed her to work, joined her for lunch, and returned home with her. I started feeling foolish until the 3rd day. Grace emerged from her office for lunch slightly earlier than usual. Instead of heading towards her car, she strolled around to the side of the building. As if on cue, a white 4-door company car appeared from the rear, and Grace slipped into the passenger seat. It seemed she was off to lunch with a coworker. It was a deviation from the routine of the past 2 days, but nothing overly alarming. I trailed them effortlessly, only to have my worst suspicions confirmed. The white car pulled into the parking lot of a shabby motel near the interstate ramp. I recognized the man as one of the appraisers Grace worked alongside, Luke something. He already possessed a key. They entered the room with a practiced ease, drawing the curtains and shutting the blinds behind them. Luke, considerably younger than Grace, possessed a striking appearance that added to my dismay. Regrettably, I hadn't planned beyond this point. Uncertain of my next move, my emotions overwhelmed reason. I contemplated waiting until Grace returned home that evening to confront her, but impatience won out. Exiting my car, I made my way to the motel door. The building, an older establishment, featured wooden door frames that, despite any safety latches, seemed susceptible to a well-placed shove. Roughly 10 minutes had passed since they entered the room. I halted a passing housekeeper, urgently instructing her to dial 911. Initially bewildered by my request, she promptly reached for her phone. I decided to grant them another 5 minutes before considering more forceful action, though my patience waned after only 2. I crashed into the door with all my might, using my right shoulder as a battering ram. The safety lock buckled under the force, causing the hinges to rip out of the wall. The door thundered to the ground with a deafening crash, startling Grace and her lover. They lay naked in the bed, and before he could even react, I seized him by the neck. The sight of my wife entangled with another man sent me into a rage beyond comprehension. It was his fault, knowing she was married, and hers for the same reason. Fury consumed me entirely. My wife had never witnessed such violence from me before. Luke faltered under the initial onslaught, unable to move or catch his breath. I took my time, methodically delivering blow after blow. Amidst the chaos, Grace pleaded for me to stop, even attempting to intervene at one point. In the heat of the moment, my elbow inadvertently struck her mouth as I recoiled from a strike. She went flying across the room, and then everything went dark. When I came to, I found myself handcuffed in the back of a police cruiser. EMCs wheeled Luke out on a gurney, and Grace stood by the ambulance, her lip being tended to with a motel sheet wrapped around her. As she caught sight of me in the cruiser, she burst into tears. A female police officer escorted her back into the room as the police car pulled away from the motel parking lot. I didn't contest the charges or request a lawyer or trial. Justice was swift, and my actions were deemed premeditated since I had instructed the maid to call 911 before breaking down the door, but the specifics of the verdict mattered little to me. I was handed a 2-year jail sentence. Before heading off to the state lockup, my brother Martin was the only one who managed to see me. He pledged to visit again once things had calmed down. Life in my new surroundings proved relatively uneventful, particularly once word spread about the circumstances that landed me there. It took 10 days before Martin made another appearance. "Walter, I thought about bringing you some cigarettes, but then I remembered you don't smoke," he joked, attempting to lighten the mood. "Enough with the jokes, Martin. What's going on at home?" "Nobody's filled me in, and all I get here are rumors and nonsense," I pressed. "It's about as bad as it could be. The kids and the rest of the family are devastated. Grace has been holed up in the house since it all went down. Dave and Monica have been staying with Mom and Dad, but they're planning to return home later this week. As for Grace, she's not talking to anyone. Jane, her sister, tried to visit, but Grace wouldn't let her in." "Is Grace communicating with the kids?" I inquired. "Not a chance. They tried reaching out, but she won't budge. I doubt she'll open up about what really happened to anyone," Martin replied. "I assume she's not going to work," I continued. "She hasn't stepped out of the house. It won't be long before she runs out of food," Martin remarked. "And who's taking care of the bills?" I probed further. "I'm not sure. I'll ask Dave to look into it later this week. Monica's determined to get back home, one way or another," Martin explained. "What about the guy?" I asked. "His name's Luke Rivera. He's still in the hospital and might be there for a couple more weeks," Martin answered. "What? All I did was give him a rough beating. Why is he still in the hospital?" I reacted. "You really did a number on him, Walter. Multiple injuries and fractures. He's on a liquid diet and has some eye issues," Martin replied. "I guess I lost control," I conceded. "It seems that way," Martin agreed. "I think I need to talk to the kids. Can you bring them next time you visit?" I requested. Sure thing, Martin agreed before leaving. After Martin departed, I compiled a list of tasks based on what he told me about Grace's situation. I felt a sense of responsibility to ensure the household continued to function smoothly, at least until the kids finished school. 5 days later, Dave and Monica arrived. Sans Martin. "Where's your uncle?" I inquired. "He had to work. I picked up Mum's car from her office, and we decided to drive up here ourselves," Dave answered, visibly proud of himself. "Why was Mum's car at the office?" I questioned. "It's been there since the day you were arrested. Mom never retrieved it. She hasn't driven or left the house since," Dave explained. "Is she okay?" I inquired, concern etched on my face. Monica shook her head, her gaze lifting. "No, she's not talking and just seems lost. She won't respond to questions and refuses to answer the phone. The answering machine is full," she relayed. "Do you two want to stay with your grandparents, or will you be okay at home?" I asked, worried about their well-being. "I think we'll manage, Dad. We just need to establish some sort of routine," Dave assured me confidently. I felt a sense of relief seeing my children taking charge of the situation. Over the next hour, we brainstormed various strategies for managing their situation, and I offered my assistance where possible. Still receiving my salary, I proposed setting up autopay for all the utility bills. I advised Monica to retrieve her mother's ATM card, enabling them to access cash and use it as a debit card for other expenses. Dave agreed to handle yard work and vehicle maintenance, while also assisting Monica with household chores and cooking. Apparently, Grace was still capable of caring for herself, but had withdrawn from social interaction entirely. Monica mentioned her mother's newfound compulsion for cleanliness and home organization, though it remained unclear whether this was a positive or negative development. Before departing, I instructed Monica to convey to her mother my desire to discuss what had transpired. Monica expressed doubts about Grace's willingness to engage, but she promised to make the effort. Despite Monica and Dave's persistent attempts, Grace never visited me in prison, nor did she call or write. Their efforts to reach her proved futile, even with the involvement of Grace's sister Jane. 6 months elapsed with no clarity or explanation from my wife. Regular visits from Dave, Monica, and Martin provided some solace, although a few colleagues taking a day off to jest at my expense added a peculiar twist to the routine. Within a fortnight of Luke Rivera's injury, his wife served him with divorce papers. He found himself in a dire financial predicament, burdened with child support, alimony, and mortgage payments. Following his discharge from the hospital, Luke was transferred to a rehabilitation center. As his medical bills surpassed his insurance coverage, he opted to sue me, a legal labyrinth I struggled to comprehend. Fortunately, Uncle Henry intervened. In a matter of days, our company lawyer countered with lawsuits against Rivera for alienation of affection and against the company where Rivera and Grace were employed. The lawyer's adept maneuvers led to a sudden dissolution of all legal proceedings on both sides. Though I didn't receive any compensation, I also avoided any financial liabilities. 3 months later, the domestic scene remained unchanged. Dave had completed his schooling and enlisted in the Air Force, set to depart in a month's time. With Monica now possessing her driver's license, they felt confident that his absence wouldn't present logistical hurdles. However, Grace persisted in her refusal to answer phone calls and remained confined to the house. While she wasn't directly causing issues for Monica, the status quo seemed unsustainable. Grace had begun flatly refusing Monica's attempts to facilitate communication between us or to arrange visits. Following Dave's departure, Monica started visiting me alone, occasionally accompanied by Martin. Grace's sister Jane made a solitary visit, though her purpose remained a mystery to me. Approaching nearly a year into my sentence, my wife had withdrawn completely, refusing to engage with me or anyone else. I dedicated countless hours to pondering our predicament. Grace never extended an apology, nor sought forgiveness, nor provided any explanation for her infidelity. She offered no ideas on how to mend our relationship or rectify the situation. In her eyes, nothing had gone awry, and her disregard for my feelings made me feel insignificant and dismissed. It seemed she deemed me unworthy of her time or consideration, leaving me feeling like an inconsequential nuisance, a mere annoyance to be rid of once Walter's problem was resolved. These thoughts consumed me, igniting an inner rage that simmered beneath the surface. Luke Rivera had completed his rehabilitation and settled into an efficiency apartment near his workplace. According to Martin, he walked with a limp and exhibited a twitch in his right eye, evoking a twinge of sympathy for me, until Monica shared unsettling news. During Grace's shower, Monica sought out Midol from her mother's purse and stumbled upon a prepaid cell phone concealed at the bottom. It contained only one program number. Monica meticulously recorded both the phone's number and the stored contact. The revelation was disconcerting. While reconciliation with Grace seemed increasingly unlikely given our circumstances, the notion of her maintaining contact with Rivera ignited a surge of fury within me. 2 weeks later, an announcement came. 127 of us would receive early release, and my name was among them. I had navigated my time in jail without incident, secured employment for my release, and carried the status of a first-time offender. It felt like an extraordinary stroke of luck. Martin and Monica arrived to fetch me, and I made the decision to resign at my parents' home for a while, giving Grace time to adjust to my presence. However, this precaution turned out to be unnecessary. Grace had vanished. For the first time in a year, she left the confines of our house without a word or a note, taking most of her belongings with her. It spared me from confronting her about her infidelity again, or rather, she avoided facing me. I looked forward to hearing her explanation, although I doubted she would offer one, given her previous silence on the matter. I also learned that Luke Rivera had abruptly quit his job that same week, which struck me as intriguing. Rather than staying with my parents, I opted to move back into the house with Monica. She seemed relieved to have me home, particularly since she had acquired a steady boyfriend in my absence. However, this also meant I spent my evenings alone. Surprisingly, I found myself missing the camaraderie of my cellmates. Any companionship was preferable to solitude. Returning to work within the week, I slipped back into my routine seamlessly, as if I had never left. Feeling indebted to Uncle Henry and the family, I committed myself to putting in extra hours, a commitment that was readily accepted. Strangely, I discovered that my taste for beer had diminished over the past year. Hard liquor had never appealed to me, so I found myself indulging in Coke and iced tea instead. Despite some teasing from my colleagues, I remained steadfast in my choices, impervious to peer pressure. The nights were the hardest, filled with thoughts of Grace and Luke Rivera. They made a mockery of me. I didn't even know Rivera, yet the treatment I received from my wife was undeserved. I had never mistreated her, never resorted to physical or verbal abuse. I had always shown her respect and affection. I had done nothing to warrant her disdain. Yet it seemed she didn't hate me, she simply felt nothing at all, discarding me like an old slipper without a second thought. It was a deeply humiliating experience. Marcy did her best to offer support, but there was little she could do to alleviate my pain. I was glad she had found companionship, particularly after the challenges she faced caring for her mother the previous year. I wanted to give her all the time she needed to recover. Meanwhile, I endeavored to conceal my depression, whether at home or at work. Immersing myself in work helped to distract me from thoughts of Grace. By the time I returned home, exhaustion often granted me respite, though not always. One Sunday afternoon, I resolved to visit Jane, Grace's younger sister. Divorced with 2 young children, she had shown me kindness by visiting me during my time in prison, though I couldn't fathom why. Sometimes I wondered if a warmer reception from me might have led to further visits. "Walter, how nice to see you. I heard you were back home. Come on in. Would you like coffee or a beer?" Jane greeted me warmly as I entered. "Coffee would be great," I replied, following her to the kitchen. "I suppose I know why you're here. I may not have much information, but I'll assist however I can," Jane offered as she set 2 steaming cups on the table. The biggest question you probably won't be able to answer is why, I admitted, sinking into a chair opposite her. You're right, Walter, I can't help you there. I tried asking her multiple times, in different ways, but she either ignored me or changed the subject, Jane explained. I thought she wasn't speaking to you, I remarked. She wouldn't even see me until a week ago. Then suddenly, she wanted to talk, Jane revealed. A brief silence settled between us, Jane seeming cautious yet willing to offer what information she could. Jane, why did you visit me at Graterford? I asked, recalling her unexpected appearance during my incarceration. I don't know. I felt Grace had wronged you somehow, and I didn't think you deserved that. But you didn't seem too pleased to see me, so I didn't return, Jane explained. Sorry about that. I was still hurting and didn't know how to react. I guess I was a bit oversensitive, I admitted. Other than what I read in the papers, I still don't know what happened, Jane sighed. I chuckled softly, setting my coffee down. It's simple. She cheated. I caught them, and I dealt with it. End of story. Except you spent a year in jail, Jane pointed out. I like to think of it as a vacation. Better than one of those damn cruises. I joked, but neither of us found much humor in the situation. What are you really here for, Walter? Jane asked, cutting through the tension. Where is she? I inquired bluntly, hoping for a straightforward answer. Reno, Jane replied, surprising me with her candor. Grace came to see me to discuss my divorce. I couldn't provide the answers she was seeking, Jane added, offering a glimpse into Grace's recent actions. Why? I pressed for more insight. She's seeking a divorce that will allow her to sever ties with you completely without any direct contact or interaction. I informed her that such an arrangement isn't feasible here. She seemed disappointed. Initially hesitant about Nevada due to residency requirements, she ultimately saw it as her only option. Her employer has a branch office in Reno, and the man she's with, Luke something, managed to secure a transfer there. She plans to file for divorce as soon as she meets the residency criteria, Jane explained. It all clicked into place, though I didn't relish the clarity. I couldn't fathom why she didn't initiate the divorce while I was in jail. I would have gladly signed the papers upon receiving them. Her delay seemed to have backfired. What did I do wrong, Jane? I posed that question to my sister as she left. She simply smirked and exited without offering an answer, Jane recounted. I suppose she decided I wasn't attractive enough. I wish she'd realized that before we married, I mused bitterly. Then you wouldn't have had Dave and Marcy, Jane reminded gently. A faint smile tugged at my lips. True. Walter, my husband, was handsome, but he was a scoundrel. Attractiveness isn't reason enough to marry a man. I won't make that mistake again, Jane asserted, her voice firm with resolve. I suppose I'll have to look for a divorcee who used to have a handsome husband. Maybe I'll have better luck next time, I remarked foolishly, only realizing the stupidity of my words once they left my lips. Flustered, I hastily stood up and thanked Jane for the coffee and conversation. It dawned on me why she had visited me at Graterford. It seemed I wasn't just unattractive, I was also a bit slow on the uptake. As I departed, Jane appeared slightly embarrassed, and I felt a pang of remorse. To distract myself, I booked a week-long Caribbean cruise and gave the ticket to Martin as a gift. Being unmarried, I knew he would relish the trip, especially with my covering the expenses. In return, I borrowed his car, preferring to keep him in the dark about my intentions. It took me 3 days to drive to Reno. Upon arrival, I located a vacant bank repo house just east of Sparks and easily arranged for Luke Rivera to visit and conduct an appraisal. He arrived equipped with his clipboard and tape measure. 30 minutes later, he found himself in the trunk of Uncle Martin's car, bound for the east. About 30 miles outside Winnemucca, I found a secluded turnoff that suited my purpose. I wasn't sure where the dirt road led, but I only needed the first mile. Though Luke had been breathing when I stashed him in the trunk, He apparently decided to cease at some point during the journey. It was regrettable, as I had hoped for further conversation. Opting for a desolate ravine with rocky terrain and rugged vegetation, I relieved him of his watch, wallet, and cell phone before disposing of the body. Perhaps someone would stumble upon him eventually, but not until the local wildlife had finished with him. Continuing my journey eastward, I found myself feeling somewhat vindicated, though it was a sensation I hadn't anticipated. I'd never considered myself vengeful, but apparently I had it in me. Stopping at a casino in Elko, I discreetly left Luke's wallet in the men's room, confident that someone would stumble upon it and make good use of the credit cards. With no report filed for a missing wallet, no one would likely flag any unauthorized transactions. As for the watch, it held no particular value, so I discarded it in a nearby trash bin. Crossing into Utah, I resolved to call Jane once I reached home. Perhaps it wouldn't lead to much, but at least I could enjoy a nice meal with her at a restaurant. Starting to feel a sense of satisfaction with myself, the ringing of my cell phone interrupted my thoughts. The caller ID displayed the same number Marcy had provided. It seemed I was about to have a conversation with my wife after all. "Luke, where the hell are you? Luke, are you there? Answer me," came her frantic voice. My unmistakable gravelly voice would give me away instantly. "I'm sorry, you have the wrong number," I responded, feeling a pang of guilt. I listened for a brief moment, just enough to catch my wife's despairing words. "Oh God, no." Without hesitation, I tossed the cell phone out of the car window. In a few days, I'd be back home. I could only hope Martin was making the most of my vacation.